time. Let me try it. Let me do the same. See. Okay, so during the last class, we did talk about some of the concepts that we're going to review again in this class. So the main thing that we're going to study in this class is the usage of the particles, the rules for the usage of the particles. And like we already discussed in the previous classes, the usage are of two types. The rules are of two types. The first one is the usage on the basis of the suffix letter of the name that we are going to use the particle with. We know that the connective particles are part of the bound morpheme word. So what do we mean by bound morpheme word? We mean to say that these are words that cannot show a meaning by themselves, and that the meaning of these words are made apparent only when they are associated with other name. When they are used with other name, these connective particles are capable of showing the meaning. Otherwise, when they are used by themselves or written by themselves, they do not have any meaning. So please also understand that when I say they do not have meaning by themselves, you must understand that we're only talking about the connective particle, which are used here. And in general sense, each of these are a combination of basic sound. And therefore, one must understand that when we are talking about the basic sounds or combination of basic sounds can have variation. So therefore, even though here we have su, which is a connective particle, we're saying that this particular su, which is a connective particle, cannot have a meaning by itself. It does not mean that it does not have a meaning if it's a sound of su. What do I mean by that is that in some cases, take the keyboard. So in some cases, we have su. We say tesure, honsure, su as who. So in those cases, you may say that, oh, in those cases, I see that su has a meaning by itself. And the thing is that the difference is on the basis that su as a connective particle and as a sound. This is the difference. This is the basis. You see the terms as a sound. Su is a sound because it's a combination of two basic sounds. So it's a sound. So this sound, when it performs as a particle, connective particle, then only it becomes a connective particle. But in general sense, every sound of su is not a connective particle. Sometimes it could be a name. So therefore, we must understand. So for example, in some cases, we see things like pa and po. But then we must also understand that these may be used in the context of the particle or as a companion word. Even though both of them cannot show a meaning by themselves, but the thing is that the function changes when it's a particle. The function changes when it's a companion word, or the function changes when it's a name or a sound. So it could be connective particle, or in some cases, companion word. And the companion word is not the particle, and the particle is not the companion word, but they may have the similar sound. This is what we must understand, that just because it has the same sound doesn't mean that it is the case. So therefore, you may come across some of these particles which are used as a name. In those cases, these particles are not connective particles, but name, because it cannot be, because connective particles are word. And when it's a naming word or a name with a lowercase n, name, it is a different thing. So therefore, we must understand this in that context. Yes, same sound and same spelling. So in that case, same sound and same spelling. So therefore, we can have su, tisure. When we say tisure or tesure, let me say tesure, sure. Who is that? So this is used as who. And then in so therefore we see that in cases these may or may not be connective particles. So this is I'll give you a better example so that because su is very vague in context. So what do I mean by that? Is that su is also a general particle. It's a generalized particle. So therefore it becomes very vague. So it's also a particle that's a general particle, but in this particular usage, it is used in place of la. So it's a particle used in place of la, latin. So therefore, I'm repeating it again. So when we say, what do you mean by when you say it is used in place of la? Is it possible to be used in every particular cases? No, these 6 particles can be used in place of la only in certain usage cases, which we're going to study, one of which we're going to study today. That is the second grammatical case. So only in those cases it can be used in place of la. Otherwise, there will be a contradiction. One will say like, oh, what about when la is a part of a name? Can we use it in those cases? And then we'll say that no, because a part of a name is not one of the usage cases that was shown or were shown or stated. So su or ru. So tu in tua. So it means smoke. Metu, me tua. So in this case, this tu means tua. This is a derived name. So just tu is tua. And we understand that this has a meaning of smoke. It means smoke. And since it means smoke, you'll see you may be inclined to say that, oh, in that case, this has a meaning by its own. But you were telling me that connective particles cannot have a meaning by its own. And then I'll say that, no. In this case, this is not the connective particle. It has the same sound, same spelling, but this is a name with a small letter n. So this is a name, mingsik, and not a word. And therefore, it is not a connective particle. And thus, that definition does not apply to tu. Right? Okay, so therefore, now therefore, those will be, so that was a clarification regarding this. So therefore, all of these 7 particles that we have, out of which the 2 particles, the 7 out of which the 2 la and na can be used with any type of suffix. And na has certain type of argument that we may discuss later on. But other than that, we know that the remaining 5 must follow a name on the basis of the suffix letter. And this rule is known as daijorju or dajor. Da, which means sound. But which sound do we mean at this time? We mean the jinjuk, the suffix letter. Out of the 4 classification of the consonants, we are referring to the jinjuk. So it follows a name on the basis of the suffix letter. And now the verse from the Tree of Excellent Speech. Sasu kapa traktar tu ngata nama rala tu hatang tame ratang ru. So this 3 lines tells us the rule pertaining the usage of particle used in place of la on the basis of suffix letter. It tells us which particle to be used with which type of suffix, which is the post any suffix. Other than that, the rules are for all the other 10 particles. Sorry, all the other 10 suffix letter. So if a name has a suffix letter sa, so if a name has a suffix letter sa, se, right? Se means the prince. It could also mean the prince, or it could mean, it's a more honorific way to refer to a son. So it can also refer to a dharma son, se, right? So Milarepa was the dharma son of Marpa, se. So se refers to son in a honorific manner. So we see that here we have the suffix letter sa. And it's very easy to see that it's the suffix letter because this is the foundation of name as it has the subjoined letter. So this is sa, which is the suffix letter. And the rule says sa, su, which means if there is a sa, you just add su. So this is the rule. It states if there is a sa, you simply add su. Sasu. Ye means left, and you see that this is the suffix letter. It's sa, so sa, su. So sasu, which is the first line, which is the first part of this line, sasu. If it has a suffix letter sa, it will be followed by su. Then ka, pa, chak, tar, tu. So very interesting. We're learning the Latin, and we see that the usage of Latin is already depicted in the text that shows the rules pertaining the usage of particle in in place of la on the basis of the suffix letter. And we already see that this Latin is used here. So this is wonderful. So kapa traktar tu. Ka, if it has a suffix letter ka, so yak. It has ka as suffix letter, and it states the rule states if it has a suffix letter ka, pa, and then a post suffix letter ta, then it will be followed by the particle tu. So yak tu. Right? Similarly, we have ta, tu. Because it has the suffix letter ka. Then it also states with pa. Cup, tu. Cup, lab, tu. To say, to hide. Cup means to hide. Lab means to say. Lab tu. Cup tu. And then with tata. Chint tu. Rult tu. Right? So these are, so this is the meaning of this portion of the line. Khaba, traktar, tu. Kha, pa, which are the suffix letter. Traktar, which is the post suffix letter ta, will be followed by tu. Then nga. If it has a suffix letter nga, pang, tu. Pang means ground. Gong, tu. Gong means on the top. Since it has the suffix letter nga, it will be followed by tu. Ta. If it has, similarly, if it had the ta, ke, tu. Pe, tu. Ke, which means the sound. Pe, which means the bottom. Since it has the suffix letter ta, it will be followed by tu. Then, if it has a suffix letter na, men, tu. Shen, tu. Men, which means medicine. Shin, which means other. So, since it has the suffix letter na, it will be followed by tu. Then, if it has a suffix letter ma, kam, tu. Nam, tu. Kam, which means either to dry or to be thin. Nam, which means the sky. Since both of these have ma as the suffix letter, it will be followed by tu. Then ra, which is the suffix. So always we can always remember that if it's in the text, which is the trio of action speech, and if you see that there is things like sa, ka, nga, these written, and this is only from the connective particle, from the portion where you begin the connective particle. You must understand that when it is written sa, ka, nga, tha, na, ma, ra, la, or pa, these are all suffix letters. These refer to suffix letters. Now, gar, tu, gar, which means the star, then mar, which means the butter, tu. Now, with la as a suffix letter, hum, tu, lam, tu. I think we've already, okay, so it's with the la. Yel, tu. Pel, tu. Pel means to expand. Gel can either mean the Buddha, it can also mean the king or the kingdom. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 suffix letters, nga, ta, na, ma, ra, la, if you see any, if there is any name which has these as the suffix letter, remember that it follows with the particle tu. Then ha, which is the suffix ha. So pa, ru. Pa means, it also means bravery. It also means mitre or a hero. Sometimes it also written as pao. Ma, which means to become lower. And both of these can also be written as bar. If there is no tsek, which is the saktung, there is no tsek after the ha, you can erase the ha and then replace it with bar, with the ra or mar. And please remember that this mar doesn't mean the red color. It means becoming lower, either or something becoming lower or shorter. So mar. So please understand how to differentiate this with the usual term that we have, marpo. Marpo is a name. Marpo can also be used as an adjective. But here, this doesn't mean marpo. This is the actual word is to become lower. A building becoming lower. A person becoming lower in rank. So, mar. And we are writing this when there is no saktung or tsek. Here, this particular part, if this particular punctuation is missing, then we replace the ha with ra. So par and mar. Okay, so now finally, tame. Tame means without suffix. So if a name doesn't have any suffix, then in those cases too, we will be using ra and ru. Saru. Soru. Sar. Sor. Sa means to eat. So means teeth. So we see that both of these doesn't have any suffix letter. So it will be followed by ru in case we have the punctuation, and will be followed by ra if they don't have any punctuation. And this is the rule pertaining the usage of the particle used in place of la when they follow a name. And this thing is shown in these 3 lines. So if you know these 3 lines, you know the rules pertaining the particle used in place of la, latin, when it follow, how it should follow a name on the basis of suffix letter. Sasu, kapa, traktar, tu, ngata, nama, rala, tu, hatang, tame, ratang, ru. Okay, so here, now this is the table which shows the same thing. This is the table that shows the same thing. So you see that, let me just bring the table here. So you see that when we have sa, it is followed by su, yongsu. So in case of sa, we must also understand that it also works for the post-suffix letter. Then ka, it is followed by tu, taktu. Every time, pa, suffix letter followed by tu, bhabtu. Traktar, which is the suffix ta, followed by tu, rultu, to be indulged in, to be totally absorbed in. Rultu means to be totally absorbed in either singing or playing or dancing. When the suffix letter is nga, tu, mangtu, to become more, pa, tu, shetu, na, tu, if the suffix is na, tu, kentu, ma, if the suffix letter is ma, tu, kamtu, ra, tu, kar, tu. Kar means fort. A fort, we have fort, right? Those things which we have, those things which surrounds a city or a king's palace, a fort. Then ha, ra, ru, depending on having the punctuation. If it doesn't have punctuation, tar at the end or tar at the end. Tame without suffix letter, ra, ru, sosor individually. If it doesn't have the tsek, sosor or sosoru individually. If it has the tsek, the punctuation. So this is the rule pertaining the usage of particles of the particle used in place of la, latin, on the basis of suffix letter chenjuk. Okay, now this is the dajur, one of the rules. Now the second rule is of the tunjur, which talks about the usage on the basis, following on the basis of usage rules. So different sentences require these, and in different sentences, these will be used differently. So the first usage, tunjur, tunjursul, or tunjur, is namye nipa. Usage case, second grammatical case. So the second grammatical case is the first usage case of latin, or particle used in place of la. Okay, namye nipa, le suchawa. Second grammatical case, action on object. So when we say object, we mean the place where the action is happening. So you will understand what I mean by action by the definition of action, and what I mean by object by the definition of object. So both of these will have definition. So last class, we were not able to give a detailed explanation on both of these. And these two are a very important part, a compulsory part of a structure of a sentence or a statement that is considered to be a second grammatical case. So second grammatical case is nothing but a type of sentence. So it's a type of sentence. And so the syntax or the structure of that sentence is le suchawa, or action on object. Le is object. Chawa is action, and su is on. So action on object. And we see just by understanding this lesu chawa, action on object, we see what kind of sentence we're trying to build here. So whenever I say, whenever I'm saying usage case, in most of those, we must understand that I'm talking about the type of sentence that we're building, right? So this is a little bit different from how the part of speech are being taught in English. In English, first we try to learn the part of speech and then the tenses, punctuations. Whereas in Tibetan, what we do is that we introduce the particle, and then we introduce the usage of these particle in different type of sentences. This doesn't mean that we don't have emphasis upon different part of speech. Definitely we have emphasis upon different part of speech, but still a very important part of the grammar becomes the different type of sentences that we're making. And therefore, most of the time when we talk about usage case, we're only talking about different type of sentences. And so the second grammar, but still, there are some exceptions. Exceptions such as the first grammatical case and the 8th grammatical case, where it's more like a statement rather than a sentence. Other than that, all of the connective particles makes a sentence. And therefore, what is the definition? So the definition, so the second grammatical case is known as le su chawa. Le meaning object, chawa meaning action. So action on object case, or you can say case. Kodun, the definition, chawe yula, chawa chepar, zo tempe, la dun, ki chetan chempe, tsigi juba shila ser. So chawe yula, chawa chepar, zo tempe, la dun ki chetan chempe, tsigi juba shila ser. So a statement of words which mainly shows an action done on an object with the particles used in place of la. So we use this particle. And the thing is that we have namye, the word namye, which means separating. It not only connects, but it also separates. So what does this particle separate in these type of sentences? It's le and chawa. So you see that le and chawa, instead of coming consecutively, which means coming continuously after each other, they are being separated by these particles. So in the sentence of the second grammatical case, these particles used in place of la de, what they do is they separate the action and the object on which the action is done. And at the same time, they show a connection between these two. They show that an action has been done on an object, and the particle that relates them, the particle that connects them, the connective particle, is the connective particle used in place of la. Those 5 particles that we have, su, ru, ra, ru, tu. So these 5 particles, definitely the other 2 also, na and la. But in these sentences, they separate action and object, so that action and object does not come continuously by its in a sentence. So when we see a sentence of a second grammatical case, we will see an action and an object, and these 2 are not coming together, but are separated in between by the particle. So therefore, namye 1. But this is more like a more of an understanding it in a way to understand what it does in a sentence. But the actual namye here, it's just the different variation of sentence. It means the second variation of sentence. Namye is variation, so it states different variation of sentence, which we understand. But upon that, if we want to bring out more understanding from this, we can say that the particular grammatical, the connective particle separates an action and the object. And the order in which it should be stated is first the object, then the particle, then the action. So now the definition is, it's a statement of word which mainly shows an action done on an object. And this relation between the object and action is shown with the particle, with the help of the particle used in place of la, de. So 7 of these particles that we have studied, or we have already stated, or we have introduced in the previous class, these 7 particles are used in these type of sentences. And when these particles are used in a certain sentence, and these particles, not when they're used, show an action done on an object, then these type of sentences are known as the second grammatical case. Action on object sentence. It is called action on object sentence. Okay, so so the component which are compulsory to be present in a statement of second grammatical case. So we can write a very long sentence of the second grammatical case. And not everything that we write in that sentence is compulsory for that sentence to be defined as the second grammatical case or the action on object sentence. But there are 3 key components which must always be present, either apparent or hidden as a reference from other statement, but they must be present. And these 3 components are, first, le sam chawe yul, the object on which the action is done. La dun ki tsikte, the particle used in place of la. And finally, chawa, action. So these sentences must consist of the object on which the action is being carried out, the particle used in place of la, any one of the 7 particles and the 5 depending on the suffix letter, and then finally the action. So these are the 3 key components, 3 compulsory key components that if you don't have these, sometimes these may be hidden. What do I mean by hidden is they may be used, they may be stated, they may not be stated directly in a sentence, but as a reference from a statement before the sentence. In those cases, it's okay, it doesn't matter because still we are referring to an object. But if we don't have any object at all, then it will never be considered as the second grammatical case or action on object sentence. So therefore, a sentence to be identified as an action on object sentence must have these 3 key components or these 3 compulsory components: object, particle used in place of la, and action. And to this point, we already know what this is. We have been familiar, but I will explain what these are. Because you may think that object, okay, so what? So you have just said that it is something on which the action is done. But then the definition of action should be important. So therefore, we will define it here so that you will have, every one of you will have a clear idea of what we mean by action on object sentence. So, okay, now the 3 key components. We need the object, lesam, chawi, and this is the order in which you're going to state them in a sentence. So first you state the object on which the action is being done, lesam, chawi. It's either called le You can either call object as le or you can call it as chayu. But please be very careful. This is only in the context of the 30. In the context of gender sign, le has a different meaning. So therefore, it's only on the context of the 30, only in this text. So therefore, only in this text, it means action, object, le, sam, chayu, object. The second component is la the particle used in place of la. And finally, the final component is the action or chawa. So three of these components are these are compulsory, the key component of any sentence so it is the deciding factor of whether a sentence is a sentence of object on action or the second grammatical case. Okay, we already are familiar with these. No need to further elaborate on these. We know that there are 7 and they are used in place of la in most of the cases, and those cases out of which we're studying the first case right now, which is the second grammatical case, action on object sentence. We don't need further elaboration on this. And there are 7 of these. And then we already talked about the rules pertaining the usage of these with different names on the basis of suffix letters. So we have already explained plenty on this. So we don't need to further elaborate. But now we need to elaborate on these 2. Okay, so first, lesam chawi yuni chawa chepar pen densar kogu teni mingsi tang mingsab le shen mingi namba kanya misito. So what do I mean? Lesam chawi yuni. The object is chawa chepar pen densar kogu. Is the one affected by the action. So we are using another word here, affected by the action. So the thing is that until and unless we don't understand the perspective of action according to the Tibetan people or the Tibetan system of language, even the definition of object becomes quite vague. Definitely the action that we have, the idea of actions that we have in the English language as an action also is considered here. So therefore, even if you use it in that context, in most cases, it will be correct. So it's the one that is affected by the action, whatever the action that is being done, something is being affected by this action. And the thing that is affected by this action or the thing on which this action is being carried out is known as the object. The object can either be a pronoun or a name. Name as a naming word, mingsik, but it is not possible to be any other form of name. When I say it's not possible to be any other form of name, what do I mean by it? Is that it cannot be an adjective, it cannot be an action word, it cannot be any of the 3 bound morpheme word. It is either a pronoun or the name. Pronoun, preferably used when you have already stated the the name one time. And then instead of stating the name again and again, you use pronoun. Mingcap. We have mingcap. It's so what does mingcap means? Ming is the naming word or the name with the smaller letter, the lowercase, and cap means the substitute, the one we use as a substitute for that name. One that can represent that name. So if we were talking about tashi, instead of always saying tashi, 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 we can say ko, which means he. So we can say ho, ko, he. So therefore, mingsap. And mingsik is the name with the lowercase n, which refers to a name of a phenomena. So therefore, it can either be a name or a pronoun. But it cannot be any other form of name, which is the Sikh terminology. It cannot be any other form of terminology like the action word, the adjective. It cannot be an action word or an adjective at all. Okay, now we have established a certain structure on what the object is, but we're still very vague on the idea of action. So what is an action? So we have the definition here. Chawa ni yula penedemba. Penedemba means to affect, to either affect positively or negatively. So either to benefit or to harm. That is the direct translation. So, but still, it could be understood as affected by. So, chawi yula penedemba. To affect a object, to affect an object. Teni, that is negurwa, change in position. The effect could be a change in position. It could be beneficial if the position is in, but the benefit and harm is mostly done in the context of someone perceiving those things. It cannot be with the, it can be with the inanimate objects, but then that would be decided by a sentient being. Someone that can think can decide whether it was benefited or it was harmed. If we have a block of ice and if we place it in the sun by changing its position from the freezer into a sun, it melts into the water. But now if we wanted the water, we will say that it was benefiting. But if we didn't want it to melt, then we'll say that it was harming. So it depends on the one who is perceiving or who is the sentient. The ice itself doesn't know whether it wants to be benefited by melting or harmed by melting. So therefore, it's better to say affected rather than saying benefit and harm. But in case of sentient, definitely we may also understand it as harm or benefit. So one of the effect is change in position. If I had something in the east, I could bring it to the west. If I had something on the top of the table, I can bring it to the bottom of the table. So this is change in position. It's mostly to have to do with both animate and inanimate objects. Then the other change or effect would be the change in the physical and mental state in case of a person, but it means more like not just a person, it means something that is sentient, something that can have feelings, something that can have the change in both physical and mental state. So this may depend. So when we say physical change, it can also depend, as if it's a sentient, it can depend on whether it's the size or the appearance or the health. If it's an inanimate, it could be the size, or the physical state could be the speed of something. So it depends on different quantity that we're going to measure it within the context. So mental state is only and only for the sentient. So if someone is happy, if someone becomes sad, that's the change, the effect. So action could be also becoming sad from happy, or making sad from happy. So depending on who is the subject. And then the action are also then that is an action word, and any other type of actions we have, like eating, sleeping, all of these things could also be understood as actions. So the same concept we have in English of the verb. So verb and both to be verb or action verb. Okay. Teni chazi de mingzi tang temi chazi de mingzi ta temi shen mingki namba kaya misito. So you also see the usage of the recompound particle that I'm doing here, which means that the definition has started from here and it's ended here. That anything that I state from here is not the definition of, it's not the definition, or it's not the definition, that is this definition of the object. So I'm using it here too. So since it is an action verb, And it's not possible to be any other form of name. It cannot be a, so therefore action chawa, which is action, cannot be a name, an adjective or particle, anything. Cannot be anything else but the word that shows the action word. So now that we have a clear idea of what is the action, so we know what is an object. So object is the one that is affected by an action, meaning it is something that is that has changed its position or changed physically, or in case of sentient, physically in a certain context, and then mentally, and then any other type of action that is being carried on. Then it could be the position of that action. If someone is dancing, it could be the stage. If someone is singing, it could be the mic or the stage. Or if someone is studying, it could be the school. So therefore, this is action and object. And these are the other two key components of an action on object sentence. Okay, so example. Nang to draw. Nang to draw. Nang to draw. So we see that here we have the connective, we have the nang to draw, which means go to whom. It could be a continuous if you just add doshin, it becomes continuous, but since there's no addition. So action, so I'm going to just say it, an action could have different tense. And there are different types of actions, transitive and intransitive actions, action word, but we're not going to discuss it in this particular text. We're going to discuss all of these in the gender signs. So that would be our subject of analysis of the text when we will study the gender sign. In this text, we're not going to touch those. So nang to do, we have three components, nang, to, and do, go to whom. And the other thing that you will notice in the translation is that the meaning of these connective particles will change depending on the context. And this is what I was always saying, never assign a fixed meaning to a connective particle. You're only going to be miserable at the end, thinking, why is it not like this in here? You'll feel like, oh, this means to all the time. And then suddenly you feel that, oh, this doesn't make sense at all. How can I use to in this sentence? So therefore, never assign a meaning to a connective particle. And you'll see this very apparently, it is an direct observation. It's not inferential, it's direct observation. A direct valid cognition that you will see here, that it does change. So, nang to draw, go to whom. So the three components, nang, which is the object, which is a name, which is home. It's a name of a place where you live, the place where you have family, it's home, nang. It's an object, so it's a name. Or it's a name, mingsik. Then the second component is to, which is the particle used in place of la tun ki te, or la tun ki tsik te. And then finally, we have the third component, which is dro, that is the action. So action on object. So action on object, sentence. This is a sentence, noun to draw. Then you can add something to that. Like you can say, to make it a complete sentence, you can say, okay, so we can say, ngani nang to draw. So remember, okay, let me just make it red so that you'll understand that this is the particle. So understand that this is not the deciding factor whether this is a action on object sentence. The only thing that decides that this is an action on object sentence are these three components. And these two are a component of this. These two are a component of the structure of the sentence. But they do not have any power over deciding whether it's a second grammatical case sentence, a sentence of action on object. But these do add a meaning of their own. So it says, let us both go home. Let us both go home. So ngani nang tutro. So this is what I was saying, the component, the key component, the deciding factor. These are the three deciding factor. And you can have so much more extra components here if you want to make this sentence even longer, more description, more subject. If you wanted to add, you can add subjects, more subjects here. You can have more than 1 to 2 subjects. And then you can also add those adverb. So in Tibetan, adverb are mostly considered to be ornamental word or adjective. So it's similar to adjective. So we put it in the same category. So we don't have a different category, but still we can add those things here. But those will not change. By adding those, it won't change the fact that the sentence is of a certain grammatical case. The only thing it will add is it will add more meaning, more description to the sentence. So the core is this. And these are just decoration. These are just decorations and many more meaning to that. So therefore, the thing that shows that this is a second grammatical case sentence or the action on object sentence is nang, object, tu, particle, later, ro. And if you change any one of these components, instead of tu, if you use any other particle that is not a later, this directly changes to a different case usage. This changes to a different usage case. Directly changes to the different usage case. Any changes you bring to these three will change the sentence, the type of sentence. But it doesn't matter if you either change it or if you don't even include this in a sentence. These are not the defining factor. Okay, now the second example, simsusam, think in the mind. So you see that it was tu in the first sentence. Now it's becoming in. And now you may be inclined to say that because it was tu, it was tu, and because it was tu, and that would be terrible reasoning. That would be a very terrible reasoning. Non-logical and not even useful to be used as an evasive plan. You cannot escape this by that kind of definition. It doesn't matter if it's tu or su. The difference in tu and su is only on the basis of the usage case, on the basis of suffix letter. That's it. Other than that, they are all the same in the same usage case. So you may say that when I say it's all the same, you may bring out different usage case, but it's used the same. But it changes the meaning on the basis of the context. It's something, if it's something that you go towards, then you use to. If it's something you go into, you use in. That's the basic usage of the preposition. And depending on the context, we change the meaning. So therefore, simsusam, think in the mind. Because we cannot think to the mind, right? We'll think in our mind or in our head. So think in the mind. The object, the first component is object, sem, the mind, where the action of thinking is going. The particle su, and then the action sam, to think. So let me just add something. So I'm just adding something to give you an example of how it could be a more elaborate sentence, right? So, so this is a more elaborate sentence. So let me just make it red so that so I'll just create one more PDF that will include all of these so you can revisit all of these. So, now this is a more elaborate sentence. We have more and more of things added on this. So we see that in this sentence, we have all of these things stated on the top of the three components. And none of this will change the fact that the sentence is of the second grammatical case. The statement is of the second grammatical case, right? You may say that, oh, doesn't it changes because this is a different part? No, this is not the main particle here. The main particle is here. So therefore, we see that in this case, none of this will change the fact that the sentence is of the action on object case. And the deciding factors are sem, su, and sam. And if you change even one of these, when I say change, I don't mean that to use if you use a different action here. No, it doesn't matter if you use a different action. You can also use an action that doesn't even make sense with the object. But the fact is that if you use something that is not an object, not an action, then this doesn't become a sentence of the action on object case, because the second grammatical case is known as lesu chawa, action on object. So if you don't have an action, how can you say that this is an action on object? So therefore, these three key components are the most compulsory ones. You cannot change these. These are the elemental or the foundation. So similarly, kiru, Drubpay, give bone to the dog. So three component, ki, which is the object, you're giving the bone to dog. So you're benefiting the dog. Let's say in this case, you're benefiting the dog by giving the bone because he has something to chew, something to play with, something to eat. Then ru is the particle. And then Drubpay is to give bone. To give the bone to the dog. But here we see that it's again changes to two. Right? Because it is in a different context. Then sakantu khalasa, eat at the restaurant. The first component object is sakan. So here we don't see any benefit, or we don't see any effect. We see that it is the position where the action is being done. It's the position where the action is done. So we're eating. The action is to eat food. But where are we doing it? Where are we doing this action? We're doing it at the restaurant. So here it becomes at. You see that these things are proving the point that I was saying, that never assign a fixed meaning to a connective particle. So sarantu khalasa, eat food at the restaurant. Then final example, zintar. I've used zintar because of not using the punctuation. You can also say zintaru, zom, gather at the classroom. So zinta, which is the object, which is the position where you're doing, what is the action here? Zom, which means together. So where is the place where you're doing this action together? It's the classroom. I think this, you can just, zintar. Zom means together. So you gather at the classroom. So zintar, zom, or zintaru, zom. So therefore, now we have established what is the key component that establishes a sentence as an action on object sentence. The second grammatical case, action on object. The first grammatical case was merely showing the identity, or merely showing the nature. Merely depicting the nature. And it's a very wonderful grammatical case. It has more depth than we initially seem it has. The more you study it, you'll understand how important it is in the context of forming every logical reasoning that is to do with language. And so if it has something to do with the logical reasoning of formation of language, then we'll understand that it has a great significance in understanding what the language is defining. So, but in any case, today's topic, so the main focus of today is the second grammatical case. So we'll just leave the first grammatical case there. So the second grammatical case, the object on action sentence. So this is what we define as an object on action sentence. So right now we have studied it by the definition. And we have studied what are the different type of particles that can be used with this. We have studied what are the key components and why are these key components. We have discussed the definition of the second grammatical case. So this is the second grammatical case, and you see that the meaning changes, and that's according to the context. So first one is nang to, go to whom. The action is done towards something, so to. Second one is simsusam, think in the mind, because the action is done in or into, so it's in a confinement of something, so in. Giving the kiru, rupatra, give bone to the dog. To, because the action is done towards something or someone. Kangpa to sahantu kalasa, at, because an action is done at a particular position. Similarly, zintarzom, gather at the classroom at, because an action is done at a particular position. So the object is a very varying concept. Sometimes it could be the position where the the action has been done. Sometimes it's a benefit. It's a beneficial action done towards something. Sometimes it's simply an action done towards a direction. Sometimes it's something that is done inwardly. So therefore, you see that the object has the power to decide what type of prepositions we're talking about. Whereas actions are just dependent on what is the context of the sentence. So object is has quite the authority on deciding the meaning of the particle. Okay, so this is it for today's lesson on this. So first we will have someone read the text. and then we'll have a question answer. So who is going to read? If anyone has question, I will take one question today, just one, because that is how much I can take today. But you can send the questions in the group. If you didn't get the opportunity to ask question, you can ask it in the group. So just one question. So does anyone have any questions regarding today's lesson of the second grammatical case? So second grammatical case is a sentence by itself. So it is a type of sentence. So any sentence which have object, action, and the ladin will be considered to be the second grammatical case. So like I have given the example in the, is it this? Not sure which key. Yeah, it's this. So like in these are all very valid sentences. You just need to add some more component, but these are all sentences. So any sentence which has object, particle used in place of la, and the action can be considered a sentence of the second grammatical case, the usage of the second grammatical case. So therefore, any sentence that has an object, a particle used in place of la, as well as it consists of the object, action. These type of sentence are known as action on object sentence. Okay, so this is it for today. And if you have questions, make sure that you send it to the group. The assignments will be sent by tomorrow. I think some of you were asking about the assignment of the previous class, right? The previous class, and it was said that it is the assignment was giving example for the subject. We had subject, right? So for the subject, and to give examples of different subjects, which is the primary subject, secondary subject, primary conscious subject, secondary non-conscious, primary non-conscious subject, secondary subject. So you can send examples of those, and I will actually send. I'll actually send a. So if you haven't done that assignment, please do that, and then you can either send it to me directly or to the group, and then I'll make sure that I create an assignment for today's lesson for practice. So I'll make sure that I include the more important questions in today's assignment, and this is it for today. And I will see every one of you most probably on Saturday for the conversation class. So thank you for joining in, and this is it for today. And Tashitele and